Generation gaps go in and out. People want to make a difference to their world, but also show a bias in themselves. Enter the 60s. A major rapid change in our world both socially and culturally. Radically different views, some of which were permanent ones that were for the best. And during those changes came pieces of media that would tell their viewpoint in all these things. Cartoons are some of those examples, which due to budgetary issues as inflation continued to get higher, animation studios became more and more limited, before the studio management decided to close each of them down. After all, theaters were at a dying phase, with TV being the main prominence of entertainment, and since quick schedules were made for TV, budgets were more or less the same. Now, toward the viewpoint of these radical changes was a young artist younger than most of the people working in the department he went in, someone relatively unknown at the time, that name being Ralph Bakshi. Taking the reins of the head of the animation studio, Paramount Cartoons, formerly known as Famous and Fleischer Studios, he went in after Seamus Culhane resigned after a feud with the new heads at Paramount Gulf and Western through the stability of the animation studio and the profits that were coming in, which was very little. And even though the executives weren't expecting much, they did have hope with what Bakshi could pull out. And obviously, Bakshi's tenure wouldn't last very long, as after finishing the last batch of contracted cartoons to be filled, one of them already being in production before he was hired, titled The Opera Caper, the managers called him up, Ralph got the word, he was out. Al Ugster would mention that on November 1967, while he was working on the final theatrical release short, Mousetrack, he had trouble animating a certain scene, so he went to Ralph Bakshi for advice, and Ralph informed him, "Forget it, Al, we're closing." "Well, that took care of that problem," Ugster recalled with some irony. But with that in mind, with each of the 4 main cartoons Bakshi was producing with writer Ellie Barr, along with an additional test subject surrounding audio of a radio show titled The Bickersons, many of which were either centered on parodies subverting expectations of cliched superhero and sci-fi flicks, or the ongoing changes of everyday life in our world, whether it's growing up or dealing with cultural changes. Marvin Diggs was the latter of those subjects. Marvin Diggs focuses on the subject of generation gaps, with the complaints of the old outdated versus the naive new and refreshing. Here, it mainly centers around Marvin and his dad named George. Marvin's appearance alone seemingly represents the carefree spirit and not doing arguably the more pointless attributes to life, such as needing to shave, showing laziness as he continues to sleep before his mother yells him to get up. Meanwhile, Marvin's dad talks to his wife, who is shown to be a housewife, having constant issues about people nowadays being lazy and doing absolutely nothing, while bragging that his early life had real work and fun.
Need is hard work. Work never hurt anyone. When I was a kid, we knew what work was. And we knew what real fun was, not like today.
George, please, remember your arches.
But we can later see how biased he really is, as he heavily contradicts himself by not even helping Marvin paint the living room, something his wife reminds him that he thought was too much work.
Now remember, you promised to paint the living room today.
Huh? Hey, that's a lot of work.
Work never hurt anybody, and besides, Marvin can help you.
But quickly realizes it could straighten up Marvin's lazy atmosphere, after an additional reminder, seeing as Marvin tries to sneak off.
I already got a brush. Marvin, work. Hard work. That should straighten him out. Let's see now. A gallon of this should do it, and a few gallons of the chartreuse, a little midnight sun. Okay, son of mine, get yourself over to the paint store and pick up these supplies. Now, on the double. Hip, 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 hip. Dear old Dad'll have that shit toe in the line.
But as soon as the actual painting begins, he tells Marvin he'll watch before lazily lying on the couch and sleeping the entire time, just like Marvin does in his bed early on in the short. Altogether shows that while these changes socially are technically different through consumption of media, whether entertainment or politics, we've always been the same in basic regular areas of life of what we want to do or not to do, whether it's fun stuff or just a load of work. After 20 years, Marvin will act just like his dad, and his son will act like Marvin, just in different social views. In between all this, however, as Marvin goes out to get the painting supplies, we can see feuds and topical issues coming in and out, from angry dogs and cats to women talking about society as Marvin gives a flower to each to represent his peaceful beliefs. some with confusion, or just downright annoyance.
Like when we were young. The knife!
Fresh, kid!
And after all we've done for them, this is their thanks.
All of these represent social climate changes, as well as the systems that were going on, like the police force, always pinning down on anyone that are supposedly going against the laws.
Hey, you. Listen, kid, I don't want no trouble, you hear? I don't like trouble, you get me? If there's any trouble, you're gonna be in trouble, you hear?
Of course, young hippies were all around wanting to do something arguably groovy to their eyes, such as when they asked Marvin of what to do. He told them he was busy as he promised his dad to help paint the living room of their house. Meanwhile, before his father takes a lazy rest after the painting job starts, he turns on the TV with an announcer speaking about how the mayor wants
all citizens to join with him in making this city a cleaner and brighter spot in which to live. He concluded by saying, "Treat your city as you would your home."
Marvin sees the great potential in this, coming back to his friends to talk about the whole thing, deciding to paint the whole town they live in for the mayor's support, all of which found to be a groovy idea. Marvin's dad finally wakes up and decides to check on his boy, but then sees the turnout and is completely shocked, angry, and devastated. And it worsens after Marvin tells him,
Don't worry, Dad. It goes swell with the outside.
It goes swell with the outside. With the outside!
his dad's worriness is about how others, such as his wife, would react.
Fuzzy, your mother will kill me. I'm doomed! How could you do it to me? Your own flesh and blood!
Especially considering that she was the one who reminded him the task to begin with. The mayor comes in with a couple of officers, wondering who's responsible for all this, seeing as he saw the latest paint being done here. Marvin's dad fears his son's arrest as he feels devastated and disappointed, and it seems like most of the elder citizens are displeased.
Fresh, kid.
In great troublemaker.
Thankfully, the mayor shows loads of positivity with the psychedelic look of the town.
What beauty, what incentive, what drive, what originality. We need more citizens like you, my boy.
Causing Marvin's dad to quickly have a bit of a change of heart and seeing the great potential in his son, before having an on-and-on conversation about life.
Say, son, did I ever tell you about the time I was your age? You know, I was your age once. Oh, that was a long time before I'm the age I am now.
In the production, Ralph Bakshi wanted to focus on several taboo subjects and language, such as the usage of profanity and sex, but Paramount wouldn't allow that, partly due to the Hays Code restrictions, which were already loosening and being replaced with a more consistent rating system a year after. Of course, these subjects, along with what was in Marvin Diggs, would end up in Ralph Bakshi's first theatrical feature, Fritz the Cat. Bakshi and Ellie Barr weren't the only ones who wanted to socially comment on these topics. Ink and paint artist Vicky Galezade was also onto these topics, as she co-wrote a song centering around Marvin and his peaceful, groovy behavior, with an obscure band providing much of the music known as The Life Cycle, run by Gary Lance and Verna D'Alta. They wanted to make sure that during the short's production that it didn't center or mention any scenario of war, as they felt peaceful protests were the right way to go, especially since a novel ongoing war was going on that met with very polarizing reception.
Not found in going, and happiness is a part of reality. Just a gentle face with flowers in his hand, and if you give him a chance, you'll understand. He feels the hurt around him, but the air of love surrounds him.
It seemed like almost everyone was focused on these topics and subjects, whether subtle or blatant, but it really took a heavy nose with our society, whether theaters, television, or just outside.